Hey guys, and welcome back to the FFP. My name is Christian, and today I'm going to cover me and Rob's playoff predictions as well as our fantasy challenge lineups. If you guys would still like to join our fantasy playoff challenge, I will leave a link down in the comments and in the description for you guys to check out the video with all the scoring and rules and such. If you already know that but you didn't turn in a lineup, you can leave a lineup in the comment section down below. It's free, and we'll be giving away some free t-shirts and a free sweatshirt as well. So it's always kind of fun and nice to compete for something. But as we look forward into these playoffs, I'm not going to dig too deep on the numbers, but we're just going to have some fun, show you me and Rob's picks. There's certainly a lot of similarities, but there's also definitely some differences. I'll try to do my best to explain kind of his thoughts behind his picks. However, he is sick, so he cannot record this video, but he will be back, I believe, in our next video, as we're going to be covering, kind of do sort of playoff coverage throughout the playoffs, continuing to update you guys on the playoff challenge scoring and who's winning, as well as just everything happening around the league. So the first half of this video will cover our playoff predictions, and then the second half we're going to cover the fantasy lineups that we put in, kind of to break this into two sections for those of you guys who are maybe watching this video not just because of fantasy, but because of its, playoffs. And that's what I hear from you guys. I do this sort of every year with my friends, like mention to people, hey, even if your team's not in the playoffs, you can still pick a team and root for them. So I want to know who that is now. Jump on that bandwagon quick, of course, so you're not doing it, Super Bowl Sunday. But anyways, so that's what I want to hear from you guys. Like, who's your underdog? Who's your dark horse that you're rooting for? Of course, I'd love to see like Ryan Tannehill and the Titans do it, although probably not very great odds there. But that's what we're going to do, because that's sort of the basis of our strategy for the playoff challenge, is to fill out our playoff bracket, decide what teams we think are the most dangerous, which teams we think have the best chance of moving on, and essentially deciding which teams are going to play the most games. I'll talk about that later, but a team doesn't necessarily have to go to the Super Bowl. A wild card team could still play 3 games and be very effective. And in fact, if you're a wild card team, you can play 4 games. So there is a boost to taking a risk on some rosters and some players that certainly could go out early and maybe aren't as dominant as some of those teams getting bye weeks like the Ravens and such. But again, I'll try to do some justice to Rob's picks and my picks. Let's break it down though. Let's just start with Rob's picks and who he thinks is going to go through the playoffs and his predictions. So, looking at it, first things first, we got in the first round Tennessee versus the Patriots. Tennessee a home team, New England a home team. You probably got to take them. Yeah, they didn't get the bye week, and I think everybody's panicking, but the standard is set so high for the Patriots. I mean, this is the first year in an entire decade, in this whole decade, that they are not having a bye. So yeah, they're a really good team. I think they're going to be just fine. And at home in a playoff game, I certainly give them advantage. Of course, Rob does too. He has them advancing to the second round, which means they'll play the Chiefs. That'll be certainly quite an interesting game. We'll talk about that in a second. Flipping over, we've got the Bills playing the Houston Texans. He's got the Texans winning, going on to play the Baltimore Ravens. So on the AFC side, we've got Patriots, Chiefs, and then Ravens, Texans. And sort of expectedly, of course, the Ravens winning that game, and then not quite as expectedly would be the Chiefs versus the Patriots, having the Chiefs win. I think that is slightly expected. And then the Ravens beating the Chiefs, going on to the Super Bowl. Over in the NFC, we've got the Vikings losing to the Saints, and the Saints going on to also beat Green Bay and the 49ers to advance to the Super Bowl. So that's sort of his bracket, what he's thinking. And we talked a lot about this as far as what we think and who's going to advance. Saints Ravens for him is his picks, and the Saints the one that I really agree with. I feel like the Saints are almost a lock at this point. They're a very, very effective team. I love them all around. They're not too old of a team, but they're also really experienced, especially with Sean Payton and Drew Brees in the playoffs, so they can handle the big time games, and that's going to go a long way. Furthermore, as a wild card team, when we get to later on picking Saints players is great, because if they go to the Super Bowl, Saints players are going to have 4 games of statistics. That is quite a large number of games, so absolutely something to go with there. I believe Rob has the Eagles winning the first round versus the Seahawks and then losing to the 49ers, who then go on to lose to the Saints. So of the notable teams there, the Ravens will play 3 games and the Saints would play 4. Other than that, everybody's playing 2 games or 1 games, which for me makes it pretty hard to pick them. But that's sort of his roundup. Let me skip on over to mine. All right, so now we're going to talk about my bracket, and unfortunately, it's very similar to Rob's bracket, and that sucks. We didn't actually even talk. We talked about a few things, but I ended up finishing my bracket, and I believe he finished his bracket before we even discussed anything, and kind of just did this on our own, and it ended up being very similar with one major change. The similarity being that we have the Saints winning all 4 games, or winning 3 games, playing in 4 games, getting to that Super Bowl. Saints are so dominant. I have such a hard time not picking them. You've got this insane Michael Thomas who sets the record for receptions. The guy's practically unstoppable. Alvin Kamara, again, I could probably sit here for an hour talking about how great the Saints are. I think you guys know that. And for a wild card team, that's huge. We'll talk about it later on with the rosters. But again, you get that huge boost of that extra game. And for me, it seems like a pretty easy win versus the Minnesota Vikings, again, especially getting to play at home. I do have Seattle beating the Eagles. That's a switch from Rob. Doesn't mean anything because both of us had the 49ers winning, the winner of that game. But for me, I take Seattle. I just don't think that the Eagles have enough weapons on offense to win that game. When you break it down, it's crazy. I believe Carson Wentz is the first quarterback in the history of the NFL to throw over 4,000 yards and not have a single wide receiver hit the 500-yard mark. He is so dominant, and I want to root for him. He is such an unbelievably talented quarterback. But there's only so far a guy can go with that level of talent. In fact, if we're being honest, they simply shouldn't be in the playoffs. Furthermore, the Saints almost beat the 49ers, or excuse me, the Seahawks almost beat the 49ers, and they could very well have a bye, right? They could be one of those top teams. So yeah, I definitely have to go Seattle in this scenario. Flipping sides, Houston versus the Bills. I have the Bills winning that game. It doesn't mean much because I have them losing to the second round versus the Ravens, just like Rob has the Texans losing to the Ravens in the second round. But I do give a slight advantage to the Bills. I love the Texans, but any given day they can fall apart. This is a team who's extremely dependent on their quarterback. Deshaun Watson is like Jesus to them. I mean, it's crazy. He does absolutely everything, and if they win a game, he has to dominate both in the air and with his legs. Their running game is not good enough. Their defense is not good enough, and their offensive line is not good enough. And for me, that's where it really sticks. You've got a well-coached, good defense, all-around team with probably I would say a better running game, and I think a much better defense and a much better offensive line, and that's just it. If you're going to lean on your quarterback to win you games, fair enough. I understand that. A quarterback is an important position, and you're going to lean on him at least a little bit. Every team leans on their quarterback, but you got to support him somewhere. Are you supporting him with your defense? Not very much. I don't think their defense is too spectacular. Are you supporting him with the running game? No, not really. With your offensive line? No, not really. And that for me is it. If you're going to lean on your quarterback, you need at least an offensive line, especially in a matchup against a good defense. So for me, I take the Bills in this one. I think that's a bit of an upset for a lot of people, but I definitely have to take it. Then I've got, of course, the Patriots beating Tennessee and moving on to lose to the Chiefs, making it Chiefs-Ravens in the AFC title game. And I have the Chiefs winning that game for a few reasons. One, people absolutely love the Ravens. I think the Ravens are very good. I don't know if they're quite as elite and dominant as some people make them out to be. I'll say this. They are probably the best team in the NFL, but a lot of people think they're unbeatable. I don't think they're unbeatable. I don't think that. I think the Chiefs are very effective. Their defense has played super well recently. In fact, I was looking at it. They held their last couple of teams to 9, 2 teams to just 3 points. They held the Patriots to just 16. They absolutely have been destroying teams. The only team that put up more points than them in their last 5 games was the Chargers, put up 21. But the Chiefs won that game 31-21, and it was really not exactly that great of a day for the Chargers as a whole. I don't think that was the best outing for the Chiefs, but as a whole, when you look over that last 5 games, that defense has been much improved. Their running game has improved too. Damian Williams has really stepped up recently. Good for him and good for the Chiefs, and so he's a guy that's definitely going to be going in my lineup. But I would absolutely love to see the Chiefs play the Saints this time around in the playoffs. I'm not going to break it down too much further. I don't want this video to get too long, but I do want to hear from you guys. What are your playoffs? What's your brackets? Who you think is going to go all the way? What kind of gambles are you taking? We were talking about it after we put our lineups together just a few minutes ago, and talking about, like, I'd love to watch Tennessee make it to the Super Bowl. I love Ryan Tannehill. That'd be really fun. Not going to happen. I get the same thoughts in the NFC for the Eagles, but I want to hear from you guys, like, who are you rooting for? Who do you expect to make it? And then who's your dark horse? Who's your underdog? Of course, rooting for that. Every year there's, that team that you're rooting for, and maybe that'll be kind of like the New York Giants, as, they beat the Patriots twice. But again, I'll quit talking. We just want to hear from you guys. So now diving into the lineups, the strategy is pretty simple. You've decided which teams are going to win games and how many games they're going to play. You simply pick the teams that do best and take their players based off of their fantasy value. It seems pretty straightforward. It's hard to perfect, but it's really easy to understand. So we both went with a pretty heavy Saints lineup. We both went with Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. So again, very similar, but we diverge in some areas. For example, our second running backs are different. He went Mark Ingram. I really rolled the dice with Damian Williams. Makes me nervous, but if you're going to win a fantasy playoff challenge against 50 plus other people, then you absolutely have to do those sort of things. And then he went with Tyreek Hill, so did I. And then our wide receivers changes. He went with Tyler Lockett. I opted to go with Julian Edelman as I have the Patriots playing 2 games. And based off of the volume and the way he performs in the playoffs, considering we're getting points per reception, I like Julian Edelman quite a bit more. Then I've got Travis Kelce. He took Jared Cook. I lean Travis Kelce over Jared Cook because the volume. Jared Cook has been great. In fact, he has scored 7 touchdowns in his last 7 games, so there's certainly no arguing how productive he has been. But when he's getting about 2 to 3 catches a game and you're seeing like 6, 7, 8 catches a game from Travis Kelce, I trust that volume a lot more. And I also know that if I'm going to go in on the Chiefs, I got to go all in on the Chiefs. And that seems like a pretty safe way to go all in. And I think if the Chiefs are going to beat the Ravens, if they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, if they're going to make a real run for it, him having some good games is going to absolutely be part of that formula. Then he went with Will Lutz. I decided to go with Harrison Butker. Again, just to kind of divulge, one of the things that I have the advantage of doing, which you guys also can do this, is going to our website and checking out the Fantasy Playoff Contest. There are a lot of Saints lineups in there, so I wanted to kind of separate myself from everybody else by putting Harrison Butker in there, just a guy who is a little bit less common than Will Lutz. And then for my defense, I went with the Saints. I love the Saints, and I think they're going to be able to put up some big points. They've got some fairly easy matchups, like, for example, Week 1 versus the Vikings. That could be a very good day for the Saints defense. As much as I hate to say it, I do have the Vikings hat and the Vikings sweatshirt, but I got to be real. I got to be honest and take my emotion out of it. And then if they win that, they'll go on to play the Packers, who is another good game. The Packers are a good team. It is in Green Bay, but I would rather play the Packers than move on to play the 49ers. That's my personal opinion. That's my thing, but you can tell me all about how dumb I am in the comments section below. I won't feel too bad about it. So guys, hopefully that answers some questions for you. Hopefully you guys like our input. Wanted to keep this video a lot shorter. Last year the video was super long. It was like an hour-long video. However, I didn't want to do that for a few reasons. One, it was too long. It was just like, ooh, it was too much. Second, Rob not being there, I didn't want to cover his stuff and make assumptions and research and talk about his predictions and his players without really knowing why, and so I really held back on his stuff. And then I didn't want to talk for 25 minutes on my picks and only 5 on his. That would seem a bit lopsided. So this ended up being a really short video. I guess my apologies for that. But we will be in the comments section down below. We get a lot less comments, so I can pretty much guarantee we'll answer it now at this point since most people are done. The other thing being, Rob didn't record because he's sick. His voice is all messed up. He looks ugly. He always looks ugly, but more now than normal. Anyways, but he said, he wants to be involved, so he said he's going to be in the comments talking to you guys. He's not too sick to do football, probably just a little too sick to do the video, if you guys can understand how that works. But anyways, guys, leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Tell us why I'm wrong, and you guys have a great day, and God bless.